Amnesia: The Dark Descent is one of the holy trinities of the hide-and-seek horror genre. The Holy Three are the only games that you need to get to satisfy your hide-and-seek desires, but I think Amnesia is the best of the three, because subjectively it has the best setting, and objectively it's the most unpredictable. You see, even though I knew nothing about Outlast before I started playing it, it didn't take long to figure out I was going to see a lot of mutilated mental people. Because doctors in mental asylums can never be morally good people, can they? Alien Isolation's only surprise was a downgraded silicon android. In fairness to Creative Assembly and Feral Interactive, they managed to make an alien game people actually wanted. But they owe thanks to Amnesia for giving them the type of game that was perfectly suited for a xenomorph. Now, Amnesia: The Dark Descent is set in a spooky castle. Our protagonist Daniel wakes up to explain that he decided to drink a cocktail containing the red pill and a handful of roofies. According to Daniel, this was the best way to figure a way out of the spooky castle. This situation is the appeal Amnesia has over Alien and Outlast, because we don't know why we're here and what's going to roger us behind the bike sheds at some point. I've always found that horror is best built on not knowing too much too fast. Let the audience's imagination ferment their fear through suspense. However, building effective suspense with a payoff is hard to get right. Unfortunately, basic hide-and-seek horror games are not inherently hard to make. Just build a game where someone wanders around a cliché dark setting, throw in a few jump scares and something to run and hide from, and you're done. This is why there's so many of them. Slender is the perfect example of a game cashing in on a name with a minimal effort put into making the actual game. In movies as well as games, it has got to the point of desensitizing horror fans, because of the sheer volume of half-arsed efforts, especially as both heavily rely on the same old horror tropes. So I was happy to find that Amnesia is not one of these half-arsed efforts. Yes, there are a few horror tropes here and there, but I won't give it a hard time because the game is original and few tropes are used. However, Amnesia does have something that always gets on my tits when I play a first-person game, and that is collecting notes, letters and general crap. The love notes are there to give us some sort of backstory, but if you want to tell me a story, tell me the story. I shouldn't have to replay levels or look up guides to find all of the information I need to get the full story, and I bloody well won't. That goes for any game that encourages boring Easter egg hunts. Most games have achievements for collecting crap as well. In Amnesia, even Daniel leaves letters for himself around the castle, which makes no sense as you would think he would want to get himself right up to speed when he wakes up from his amnesia-induced cocktail. But no, Daniel is on another level of being a dick. He is on the level of dickishness of someone hiding their car keys from themselves when they had a drink the night before. That minor complaint aside, overall I really enjoyed playing Amnesia: The Dark Descent, because innovative thought had been put into it. First off, I like that the atmospheric noises are environmentally correct, which always helps with setting the immersion. There's no nonsensical out of place generic horror noises. Okay, minus that one little girl running away laughing. I also really like that Amnesia uses misdirection because it creates opportunities to catch the player off guard, which keeps the game interesting and unpredictable. This fixates a state of high tension for the majority of the game. The tension building through setting the immersion is a good example of how a horror game should be made. The creators know horror because not only do they get the immersion and the misdirection right, they also have a real threat to the player in the game. Because of this, Amnesia isn't one of those glorified interactive horror houses, which can only lazily rely on jump scares. The game encapsulates the various aspects hide-and-seek horror games should have. Now initially the unpredictability started making me more and more anxious, because I wasn't able to predict when something was going to happen. I also didn't know what I should be scared of. I just knew that something was poking about in the castle and it didn't particularly like me going through all of his cupboards. For me, Amnesia is how a horror game should be made, because I didn't feel like I could take it easy or be off guard at any point. I developed a paranoid sense that something was behind me as I sneaked around the dark corridors. It's been a long time since I played a horror game which made me weigh up if I should actively find something to kill me just to end the stressful tension. That is how good Amnesia is at unnerving. The most innovative mechanic Amnesia has is the sanity meter. This alongside the atmosphere takes the immersion to the next level. It works like this: if you stay in the dark or look at a monster for too long, Daniel starts to freak out. Visually displayed similar to what it's like to have a panic attack. The longer you are exposed to either one of these, the more severe the panic attack gets. The only defense Daniel has against the dark is a source of light. He can make light by finding matches to light candles. Daniel also finds a lantern which needs to be refilled with oil. The sanity meter is such a fantastic mechanic because it forces the player to act similar to how they would in real life. Because let's be honest, most people in Daniel's situation, or in fact most horror situations, would quickly find themselves in a puddle of their own excrement on the floor from sheer terror. It's a real shame that other games haven't tried building on this mechanic, because the sanity meter realistically immerses the player into Daniel's situation, in a way no other game does. I also like the level design throughout because it's carefully designed to expose you to the dark while giving you just enough resources to create light. Needless to say, this builds the tension on the foundation of the well-set atmosphere. The careful balance of exposure to the dark made me want to rush through the dark parts to find what I needed and get the hell out of there. I also appreciated the safe respites pulling myself together in the light, and I felt hopeless when I ran out of all of my lamp oil and I only had one match left. The main enemies to avoid are victims of some sort of hocus-pocus dark torture magic conducted by our antagonist friend Alexander. It's never explained how he makes his Hellspawn army identical. Maybe he has some sort of Play-Doh press he puts them through during the process of making them into whatever they are. But all you need to know is that you should hide from them. I found this out the hard way, firstly by ignoring Daniel warning me that one was coming. I just assumed he was a bit mad and was hearing things. The second time Daniel mentioned that one was coming, it immediately smashed in the room and killed me before I could check if my phone had signal. The third time Daniel warned me, I was ready, but I realised I was in a room with nowhere to hide, so I stood bravely in the centre of the room with my legs quivering, armed with a frying pan, awaiting my fate. I did however gather some useful information from my heroic deaths. One is that the Hellspawn army don't give two fucks if you throw something at them. The other thing I found out is that when you respawn after being killed, most of the time the enemy that killed you doesn't respawn. This is a bit of an exploit as there's no punishment for death. I think Amnesia could have implemented a permadeath system similar to Senua's sacrifice. Amnesia could have increased Daniel's insanity instead of goo going up Senua's arm, as a punishment for death. If the meter reaches the highest insanity level, then the game is over. I also think that the game is well balanced enough for the system not to be a pain in the arse. People wouldn't be dying all the time, thus having to restart the game from the beginning over and over again. So after finding out dying makes the enemies go away, I decided to play my own game.
Hunt down the Hellspawn.
The hunter became the hunted. Yeah, how do you like someone running up to you while you're skulking about in the dark, fuckfaces? Or is it fucked faces? Alexander, what exactly did you do to these people? The most important thing I found out is that you can't outrun these domesticated Cenobites. If they see you, they will get you. There is no way of outrunning them or getting out of their line of sight. The other kind of enemy in the game is so well done using a simple idea that I won't spoil it, it should be experienced firsthand. Amnesia has various puzzles as you progress through the game, some of which demand attention to detail, but they are the right balance of giving enough information to figure them out without spoon-feeding the answers. I would say that some of the puzzles took inspiration from Half-Life, because most are multi-layered physics-based puzzles that ask the player to use lateral thinking. Like Half-Life, the satisfaction for completing them is on the money. All in all, I'd say The Dark Descent lives up to its reputation. It's been a long time since I've played a horror game which I got so immersed in. Part of the reason why Amnesia works so well is because it's quite short, but that works to its advantage as it doesn't outstay its welcome. This avoids the player finding their feet and getting comfortable, which is always a bad thing for a horror game. I'd prefer a short but impactful experience rather than something that waffles on for way too long. The immersion, story, puzzles and enemies are all done so well that the game is quite hard to fault. It stands up very well in comparison to horror games today. In fact, it's a good yardstick to compare other hide-and-seek horror games to. Recently, Amnesia has started to find its way into the bargain bin on consoles, which is an absolute steal and no-brainer bargain bin buy.